high school football and find out the favorite Bob Seger song of our next guest, and that would be Kevin Minnick from NJ.com. And Kevin, I know producer Hunter Brody asked you that off the air, and your answer was?
Pete, I do not have a favorite Bob Seger song.
Now,
because to be quite honest with you, I'm really not. I've never really been a Bob Seger fan, so I will have to decline on this particular question.
Pass, right, and that's why I love you. Before Hunter called, I said, I'm going to bet Minnick's going to say, nah, I'm good. Like, nah, I'm okay. I mean, this guy, look at all the hits he wrote, though, Minnick, right? I mean, Night Moves, Ramblin' Gamblin' Man, Turn the Page, Still the Same, Against the Wind. None.
That's fine. That's fine, and that's great. But I've never been a Bob Seger guy. I'm not. I think my musical tastes are probably a little bit different than a lot of people of my age. So I'm. Like I said, I'll pass on that question.
Well, thank God your football tastes fall right in line with me, because that's why we love having you on each week. And I'll tell you what, Kevin, boy, were there some games last night, including the fact that St. Augustine hands Williamstown their first loss. That grabbed my eyeballs, and of course it's 2019, so you're listening to Bob Seger, but you're also scrolling through the Twitter feed at K Minnick Sports. Was that what jumped out at you? That's got to be the top story of the night, right?
Yeah, I think aside from Mainland beating Ocean City down in the Shore area, that game last night was the big game in South Jersey, and I think Pete Lancetta could probably be sitting in his chair right now and wondering where his football team would be if he had his full team as it's comprised today, from the start of the season. Not to say that they would be undefeated, but I think, I think that they would not have lost 3 of their first 4 games. They are, without question right now, one of the best teams in South Jersey. They bring it on all phases of the game, and last night's game against Williamstown. Really, if you weren't a believer that they are a serious team in South Jersey, and may be able to make a little bit of a push in non-public 4, I think last night proved it. They got it done on all aspects of the game, and came up with some key plays when they needed it, from a team that it really is on the younger side. That team's going to be a force the next year, and then 2 or 3 years, and probably continuing down the line, because they're very young now, and they're getting solid production from sophomores and juniors to go along with their handful of seniors. So very impressive win last night by them.
Kevin Minnick with us here on the Pete Thompson Show, and you talk about some of the game within a game. In fact, you're writing Williamstown's next series. Hill forced a fumble following a 39-yard pass play to the Hermit 6-yard line. If Williamstown maintains possession and scores, still anyone's game with nearly 9 minutes left in regulation, but instead the defense steps up, including a Texas A&M recruit.
Yeah, Isaiah Rakes, during the course of the game made some really big plays. He blocked the punt that set up their first touchdown, a strip sack later on in the game. Pete brought him in, when they needed to pick up some key yardage, because to be quite honest with you, it takes more than 2 or 3 guys to bring him down. The kid is a force at 300 and change. Williamstown it took 6 or 8 guys to tackle him last night, and by the time that was over, he had picked up 6, 8, 10 yards. So, he really did. Pete did a great job last night of putting Isaiah in solid positions to do some damage offensively. And then, you look on the flip side on defense, some other kids. Nasir Hill comes up with a pick 6 to give them an insurance touchdown. Really early in the fourth quarter, and Williamstown had an opportunity to come right back and to close the gap with plenty of time left, to make another drive, and Hill chases down a receiver, strips the ball, and Williamstown would have been sitting at the prep 6-yard line with about 9 minutes left, and instead St. Augustine gets the ball and They didn't do anything with it on that possession, but really took all the steam out of Williamstown at that point. And I think pretty much at that point the game was over.
Kevin, last question on St. Augustine before we move on. The first year I was in South Jersey and had come back from Nebraska was 2004. And I don't know if it was that season or if it was 2005, but somewhere around there, it probably had to be 2004. I went to a Saturday afternoon game at St. Augustine. I forget. I want to say they played Holy Spirit. It was on the grass field that was like in the lower back portion of the campus out there. The field was awful. The press box was awful. The facilities were terrible. Holy Spirit destroyed them. And I remember somebody saying like, yeah, well, it's kind of like Duke football, like this team's known for its basketball program and nothing else. So with that in perspective, to then hear you, Kevin Minnick, say, hey, they might make some noise up north, that kind of almost really tells you where St. Augustine football has been and where they are now.
Yeah, if you want to start out, the field is beautiful, the press box is outstanding. The guy, the voice of the Hermits, Will Morris, does a great job, with everything in the press box and the stats and everything. So from that aspect, it's probably night and day. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say that they are ready to be a force in the state in non-public 4, because I don't think that they're there yet. The North just has far too many more opportunities to get kids from much, much, much more populated areas. They're bringing them in from New York and Connecticut as well. So, from that aspect, I don't think St. Augustine is, to be honest with you, they're not even close right now to that area. But, they're getting some kids. They're putting together some talented players. They're getting results down here, and it needs to translate. I give them a lot of credit, and I remember not too long ago watching them play at Bergen Catholic in a first-round playoff game, and I think that the score was 35-0 in the first quarter. That's how dominant Bergen Catholic was that day. I know Mark Reardon was the coach at that point. I think they have come along a little bit. Obviously they took the number one team in the state last year in St. Joe Montvale. I believe it was a semifinal game or quarterfinal game, and lost only by 7 points. So I think they're coming along. I think they can challenge the teams in the North. I think they're in a much better place to be much more competitive at this point. I'm not going to say I think they can knock off one of the big six right now, but I think that they can be competitive, and with a break here or there, maybe they could win a game. So I think that they're definitely heading in the right direction as far as being able to compete in non-public 4 as far as the state's concerned.
So Kevin Minnick's with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. Normally we run through a lot of scores. We go game by game, but I wanted to go a little St. Augustine heavy because that was such a big win for them. You mentioned Mainland at Ocean City, and we did a lot of that in the first hour with Mike McGarry, so I don't want to go over the same ground we covered. I will say this. I told McGarry that, because I'd been at the concert, I was up late, way past my bedtime. Last thing I decided to do was I checked Twitter to look at your feed, look at his feed, and you were still tweeting at almost 1 o'clock in the morning because, as McGarry explained, there's this triangle of how do you pick who the new number one is in South Jersey? And I saw you reference like Lenape, that. Could you explain that to the listeners and why it's going to be a challenge for you to rank teams this week?
Yeah, it's a challenge because, on the surface, you kind of have to, I think you have to look at a team's complete body of work. When it comes to something like this, you can't just blow off the fact that Lenape beat St. Augustine in week 2. That's, people are going to say, well, that was week 2. St. Augustine wasn't the same team as they are now. Everybody, because there is no concrete formula to determine this, it's purely subjective, and it's basically, it comes down to being opinion, in all honesty. But when you have Lenape beating St. Augustine 20-7, you have St. Augustine knocking off Williamstown last night. I want to say they pulled away and it was pretty decisive towards the end. And then you throw in the fact that Williamstown knocked off Lenape in what was turned out to be a pretty close game. Up until last night, Williamstown's toughest game. It's a matter of, I think it's going to come down to an eye test. To be complete honest with you right now, I think it comes down to an eye test. And for my money, and I don't have the complete say in everything, I would say today I would probably jump St. Augustine to number 1 in South Jersey. I'm seeing the way they're playing now. I'm seeing how dominant they've been in all aspects of the game. I just think right now they may be playing the best football of any team in South Jersey. No disrespect to Lenape. I saw them last week, but at the same time last week, their coach wasn't real thrilled with the way they had been playing. So I kind of factor that into the equation a little bit as well. But, I think right now St. Augustine, when you look at it, I think right now they're probably the best team in South Jersey.
And that is from a dedicated SJ sports writer, South Jersey sports writer, highlighting high schools for better than 30 years. I know that because it's on his Twitter bio, at Kevin Minnick, KMinnickSportsNJ.com. You got a little Saturday action for us? You heading out today?
Yeah, we got an interesting Group 1 game between Penns Grove and Salem, and we're going to go down and check out Penns Grove. They're number 17 in the state, the only Group 1 team in our state rankings, and I want to kind of get a look at them. They've won 21 straight games. That's a program that I don't think a lot of people, unless you're a hardcore football junkie, is really paying any attention to, but they can play the game. And, I want to get a perspective on how they are because I saw what Willingboro did to Woodrow Wilson last week. I was at that game, and I came away extremely impressed with Willingboro, and Willingboro backed it up last night with a 2-touchdown win over Camden, which is not a bad team as well. So I want to kind of get a perspective on the two Group 1 powers really in South Jersey right now in Penns Grove and Willingboro because, I think that those two teams are going to clash again. I think they can both win a sectional title and meet again in the regional, championship game to wrap up the season. But, Penns Grove is a team that puts points on the board, plays terrific defense, has a very, very talented senior linebacker in Mekhi Scott, who, I don't think enough people know really about. The kid has 100 tackles again this season. He's going to finish his career with, I want to say, close to 600 tackles. He's just really, really a disruptive force, and they've got another handful of athletes down there that can create trouble for an opposing team. So I'm really interested in seeing what they do against probably their biggest natural rival in Salem High School. So we're going to check out the Red Devils and see if the streak goes to 22.
Nice. Kevin Minnick with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. So, of course, playoff cutoff date right after these games get done this afternoon. By tonight, in theory, right? They'll get together and kind of pick the pairings and stuff. I mean, what time, if we're checking at K Minnick Sports, right? What time will you start knowing these pairings?
That's an interesting question because there's a lot of afternoon games and there's some evening games tonight. So tonight might be a long night. The best bet is to wait till tomorrow morning and follow us, with the seating meeting. And we're going to have a live Facebook Facebook Watch post, and we'll get the information out as soon as it's available. But with the way PowerPoints are set up and the OSI and the UPR and all that. I don't pretend to know the insides and outs, but other guys on our staff have done an outstanding job this week in really deciphering all that. So if people go to the site, they can get a pretty good understanding of what's going on and try to figure out who's going to be playing where. But I think pretty much most things are probably settled. You might have a team jump here or there. Especially I think in Group 2 involving Pleasantville and Cedar Creek. I'm not sure about the math right now, but they could jump as far as earning that top spot in what I think is going to be Central 2, because I think West Deptford's probably going to be the number 1 seed overall, and they'll stay in the South. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But like I said, the people keep on our website during the course of the day, and obviously tomorrow morning they'll get everything they need to know.
Great stuff out of you as always, Kevin. I know you don't like Bob Seger, but we like you, buddy, and we like having you on each Saturday to break it all down for us. Don't worry, man. I'm terrible at math, too. I'll hire somebody else to do the math for us.